This is a production from the Takedown Sports. What's up, y'all? T Brown 31 here from the Takedown Sports, along with J Bach the Great, and this is another episode of The Last Word. We got a bunch of topics to hit today, so what's coming up?
Yeah, we'll be covering all of the NBA playoff games from the past week, and we'll discuss some off-the-court news as well.
It sounds great, but today we'll be starting with some news dealing with the NCAA. So, the Supreme Court issued a ruling on Monday going against the NCAA, essentially stating that they were out of line in limiting education benefits that schools can give to their student athletes. So, the biggest quote here is from Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, stating the NCAA is not above the law. The NCAA couches its arguments for not paying athletes in innocuous labels, but the labels cannot disguise the reality. The NCAA's business model would be flatly illegal in almost any other industry in the United States of America. So, pretty strong quote from a Supreme Court justice there. And this is a pretty big deal going forward because we've had debates for the longest. Should athletes be getting compensation? And this is a pretty strong ruling from the Supreme Court to the NCAA saying, hey, you can't limit the benefits that these guys get.
Yeah, I mean, this ruling is kind of the first step in cracking through the shell of the NCAA and their restrictions. Of course, they're limiting the benefits that they get that go to their education. It's not the only thing the NCAA limits. Can't have a job or anything like that as a college athlete. And so I know Brett Kavanaugh wants to push to get more things opened up so that athletes can be fully compensated. Of course, the NCAA is going to try to fight against it, but I mean, he is correct. The way the NCAA works would be pretty much illegal, and the way our system works in America. And so, yeah, this was a well-deserved big hammer down on the NCAA, and I hope that we get more positive progress.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to sit here and say like, oh, that college athletes should be getting contracts, signing agents, getting contracts for 10 million a year to play football or whatever like that. Because we do know that every single athlete does not generate a bunch of money for every school, but the athletes that do generate millions deserve to get some sort of compensation. You can bring up the fact that they're getting a free education, but let's say college costs 50,000 a year for whatever school. Let's say a school like Stanford or something like that. A really good player, a top tier player on the football team, let's say their star quarterback wins the Heisman, he's going to be worth a lot more than 50,000 a year. So, like I said, you don't have to give them contracts and give them yearly salaries or anything like that, but increasing their benefits that they can get, for their education, like allowing them to get a job on the side if they really want to. Because not every single athlete is going to be going to the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever it is. So this is a big deal, like you said. And Kavanaugh saying this is will be flatly illegal in any other industry is a pretty strong point there. Um, it seems like a lot of people are too afraid to call out the NCAA for what they're doing, just because it's under the guise of, oh, it's college and they're getting an education. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of irrelevant to the point that what they're doing is pretty scummy overall.
Yeah, they kind of get to hide behind that veil of like, oh, we're a college organization. We help boost education. When really they're not helping with education at all, and they're not helping people get further in life either. Especially with the whole you can't get a job, like because like you said, not every athlete in college is going to go into the major leagues that they're trying to get to, and some of them might not even have plans to go into those leagues. They might just they go there to play in college and earn whatever degree they're earning, and go on and do something else. And so not allowing them to get any kind of experience anywhere else during their college time is definitely, a big wound to their future. And it's stuff like that is really, really just glossed over. And yeah, super strong statement from Kavanaugh. And, he kind of like to see it.
I would pose this question to you. Besides expanding the benefits that they would get, what else could the NCAA do to help out these athletes, pretty much get what they deserve in a sense?
I think the main thing is obviously what we've been talking about a lot is allow them to have some work on the side at the very least. But like you said, these athletes, especially the big guys like somebody like Trevor Lawrence, is going to bring in so much revenue to a certain school. At least allow them to get something like off the way you use their likeness, like allow them to get a little bit of it. They don't need, $30 million contract as if they're an NFL star or something, but let them earn some money from their likeness and from the work that they're putting in.
Yeah, I mean, it's something as simple as just, if they sell this many jerseys or something like that, or if they get this many endorsements, blah, 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 just some kind of like perk system or anything like that, where you meet a certain goal and then you might get a certain amount of money. Again, it doesn't have to be millions of dollars that they get, because truthfully, if a college athlete made 10 million a year or something like that, are they really even going to try that hard to, further? I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of not trying in college, because these guys are absolutely trying to the fullest. That's why they want to get paid in the first place. But, it doesn't have to be anything crazy or huge. Just small endorsements here, a little bit of money for jersey sales here, autographs. That was a big, scandal we've seen multiple times where guys sign memorabilia and they've gotten in trouble for that. Obviously, a big name comes to mind. Reggie Bush had to give back his Heisman for some benefits that he got. At the end of the day, it's not like they're killing people with doing this. So I just give the athletes some things for all they've done for the school. I mean, some of these schools are pretty much funded by these football programs and other sports programs. And if you look at how big these stadiums are bigger than NFL stadiums, some of them. I mean, there's really only the stadium that they're making in LA that rivals it. And so with these huge stadiums, somebody's obviously paying for it. And the fans are obviously there to see the football players, and any other sport. They're there to see the players. Players should be compensated in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, same with like I said, Trevor Lawrence sticking with Clemson, like that's a big school where football is a lot of the revenue they gain. And I know just from the way COVID happened that not being able to have full capacity for Clemson made some professors have to take less money because the college didn't have as much money as they were usually getting. And so yeah, football is this huge thing for these schools that brings in a lot of revenue from fans coming into these huge stadiums, buying jerseys, buying tickets, buying food at the games and all this stuff. And with the buying jerseys and stuff, that's literally just they're buying the jersey of the player that they like to watch, and that player is gaining nothing from it. They're I mean I'm sure you get the satisfaction of hey that guy's wearing my jersey, but that's also you didn't get anything from that other than the emotional reward, which sometimes may not be enough when you actually think about I could be making a little bit of money off of this, and I'm really putting my all into boosting up the way this college is being run, and I'm not getting anything from it except maybe a trip to the NFL, maybe.
Tim Tebow, uh, I'm not really sure what his exact stance on it is, but if you put Tim Tebow back in college, we're going back to 2007, 2008, 9, 10, and we look at how much he generated for Florida, it's insane. I mean, the man is still a legend to this day just because of those years at Florida. Regardless of how he turns out in the NFL this year, he's forever going to be a legend because of that. And he didn't receive any money for that we know of. So, it's just a little interesting. You have these mega stars in college and they don't receive any kind of benefits for that. It's just a little weird to me.
Yeah, and to kind of tie on for that, one thing I do hope as far as this goes is that these super college stars that have now made it to the NFL or just anywhere, anyone that was like a big college star and could have earned a lot of money. I hope that when they see these young guys, hopefully get to earn some money as the NCAA hopefully gets cracked open a little more. They are happy for them, and they don't do the bad parent thing of like, oh well, I had it hard, so you got to have it hard. You're so spoon fed, like because they should just be happy that we have some movement and that these young guys get to gain something that they weren't able to just because of a bad system.
Yeah. And then the thing is, people would say this would take away from the amateurism of the sport and all that stuff, and I kind of get their point, but we would still nothing about the sport really changes. You know, these guys are just getting a little bit of benefits for the money they're generating for the schools. And plus, if you give these guys benefits, high school students that are, debating whether or not to go to school and whether they want to be a college athlete or not, they'll probably be more incentivized to be college athletes, knowing they'll get a little bit of benefits, be able to have a job on the side and, still get that education, obviously. So you'll have more players coming into the NCAA system. And obviously that's more money for them. That's more TV ratings. That's more everything. So I understand the NCAA doesn't want to, give away money, but in the interest of your sport, just go ahead and give them a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you there, especially if you pull in like the high school students who are kind of on the verge and like could be some really good college players. You're bringing in more revenue by getting these more exciting players to come and getting people to come watch your stuff. So I don't see where it could be a bad idea, other than the fact that the NCAA is stingy.
Moving on to some basketball now, we'll be talking about game 6 of the LA Clippers and Utah Jazz series. So on Friday, the Clippers and Jazz played in game 6, and the Clippers ended up winning the series 131 to 119, getting the Jazz out of there in 6 games. So the Clippers were led by Terrence Mann with 39 points. He absolutely exploded. Paul George came in with 28, 9, and 7. Reggie Jackson with 27 points and 10 assists. On the other side, Donovan Mitchell led with 39 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists, but it wasn't enough for the explosion from the Clippers, and Utah will be going home.
Yeah. So Utah is gone. Donovan Mitchell, like you said, he put up a great fight, but it wasn't good enough. And Terrence Mann did 39 points in 36 minutes, which was incredible. He was just hitting everything he wanted, and it got to a point where even though Rudy Gobert had an okay night, I mean, he had a double double, 12 and 10. He wasn't a guy you wanted on the court because he would try to stay on his guy, and then they'd do a little bit of ball movement, and now he has to leave somebody open, and boom, easy shot from either Reggie Jackson or Terrence Mann. And he became a defensive liability, which isn't something you would think about Rudy Gobert, but it's only because Terrence Mann just came out of nowhere and caught fire. Now, he probably won't do that again for the rest of the playoffs. And if he does, it won't be as surprising because now we know he can. But it's not expected for him to drop 40 again.
Yeah, man. I mean, he had an absolutely tremendous performance. The Clippers, they could have lost this game and gone to game 7, but why would you want to? You want to get out of there as fast as possible, and they did that. They did it again, man, going 0-2 to start the series, and then they win the next 4 in this one, pretty much essentially just wiping Utah off the face of the earth. Being the number 1 seed, I expected Utah to go a little bit further. Now I would have thought they would have had a good series against the Suns in the conference finals if they made it, but that didn't happen. We know Donovan Mitchell was banged up, and we know that Mike Conley missed a good bit of the series. But the Clippers won those last few games without Kawhi, and obviously they had to have Paul George step up, and he did. Reggie Jackson went crazy, and he, you know, hopefully he can continue that into the next series, as we'll get into that in a little bit. And Terrence Mann being the biggest surprise here, he went absolutely crazy with almost 40 points. And whenever the Clippers look like this, they seem like the absolute best team in basketball, and it's not even close. Um, Now we've seen teams do this a lot, where their best player, the second best player, will go out and they'll go crazy because they'll have people step up. But if you add Kawhi back into the situation, you're thinking, heck, they would have probably done the same thing. But the fact that they did it without Kawhi shows how good this Clippers team is. Again, they beat the number 1 seed in the West. Now, the top 2 players on the Clippers are probably better than the top 2 on the Jazz, obviously, for the majority of the series until Kawhi went out. And that's when we asked the question, can Paul George take over and lead his team to a victory in the series? And he did. So I have to give Paul George props there because obviously we talked about this last week. Paul George should have been named Pandemic P for about the past year, ever since the bubble. So he kind of redeemed himself in this series, playing darn near 48 minutes in that last game. And props to him and props to the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, he came out and he earned the playoff P nickname, the actual, playoff P. And that's the ending of this season. He came out and he put the number one seed home. And I mean, he had a lot of help, of course, but he was the front man for most of it. Now, of course, he didn't lead in scoring during that last game. That was Terrence Mann, and but Paul George was the next one in line, and it was not for his assisting and being able to rebound and his ability to defend and just stop people from having big moments. He definitely showed up and became playoff P to get him out of there and try to buy some more time for Kawhi to get back. And Reggie Jackson, you got a Clippers team and they've got Reggie Jackson averaging like 20 in the playoffs with Paul George doing about the same. And then people like Marcus Morris and Nick Batum and few of their other guys all being very, very good for at least their caliber of player. It's hard to say that they're not going to win the championship. I mean, it's just easy pass, assist, score. Good ball movement, good defense, and they just shut people down.
Yeah, we know that Terrence Mann, like you said, isn't probably going to go for 40 again for the rest of the playoffs. But the fact that we know he has the capability to at least help out a tremendous amount is great. Paul George has to play like that all the time. He has to be a playoff P all the time. Like I said, Reggie Jackson, if he continues playing like that, they'll be good. Marcus Morris, whenever he shows up, he didn't really do a whole lot. Now he's a good defender. He's that tough guy for the Clippers. But whenever Marcus Morris shows up and he gets a lot of threes, the Clippers, like I said, they look like the absolute best team in basketball. And we'll see in this next series against the Suns whether or not they have it.
Yeah. One last thing I want to make about Terrence Mann is that even though he might not go for 40 again, teams now have like the Suns, they've seen him do that, right? And so it's now like if we let this guy get too open or get too hot, he will kill us. And so it's a little bit of a mental thing too. Like, all right, this rookie is not just a rookie; he'll come out here and put us home if we let him. So it's definitely this was a really great Game 6 performance. They didn't allow themselves to be put in the corner. They just came out and ended it.
Now we're moving on to the Eastern Conference semifinals. We had two of those game sevens. We had the Milwaukee Bucks and Brooklyn Nets on Saturday night. And this game ended up going to overtime with the Milwaukee Bucks winning 115 to 111. Giannis played 50 minutes and put up 40 points. Chris Middleton with 23, 10, and 6, as well as Brook Lopez getting 19 points, 8 rebounds, and Drew Holiday with 13, 7, and 8. On the other side, it was pretty much the Kevin Durant show, and that proved to be the downfall in the end, though. Kevin Durant put up 48 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. And the next leading scorers were James Harden and Blake with 22, 17, respectfully. Now, this game did go into overtime, like we said. KD hit an absolutely crazy shot at the end of the game in regulation, but unfortunately, his big toe was on the line, so he didn't get the three, which would have won them the game right there. They go into overtime, and it's probably one of the worst overtime periods I've ever seen from both teams. KD's forced to shoot a horrible shot at the end, and that was pretty much it for the Nets.
Man, I ain't gonna lie. When we won this game, it felt like it was like a championship win to take out Brooklyn, but it's obviously not. We still have more to go, and it's back to reality. But this game was so stressful as a Bucks fan, as it was very back and forth. And then going into overtime, the Nets scored immediately, so they went up to 111 like almost as soon as overtime started, and then nothing happened for like 5 minutes, and the Bucks managed to get a nice shot off from Chris Middleton after some well-needed ball movement by Drew Holiday. And there was this weird foul that happened at the end that let Brook Lopez put 2 in to make it 115 to 111. But it was a great game. Kevin Durant put his all into it. You can't hate him at all for this game. I've seen a lot of people say like, "Oh, well, see, he couldn't pull it out," but you can't ask for more than that. And sure, he shot like 1 for 4, either 0 for 4 and overtime. But he had just put up 48 and he played 53 minutes. You know, the man had to be tired. It was a game 7. This is definitely was a classic game. But as a Bucks fan, I gotta say, if Drew Holiday ever shoots like that again, we ain't going anywhere. Uh, that was a terrible game. He had some good assisting, good rebounding. His issue was he would get a rebound, run down the court, and try to like lay up through 5 people, and he's 6'3". It just ain't gonna happen. Very dumb plays for the Bucks throughout a lot of it, and we just got to do better. It was a good thing to move past Brooklyn, but we got to improve still.
Yeah, I mean, like you said about the Kevin Durant point, you can't really ask him to do much more. I do see people saying, oh, Kevin Durant failed, blah blah blah. He can't go out this and that. And look, the man played 53 minutes, put up 48 points. The next closest scorer was a hobbled James Harden at 22. So I mean, there's not really much else he could have done. And I think that shot at the end was pretty much just like he's tired. Like that was pretty much it. They could have probably set up for a lot better shot there, but he was just tired and giving the Bucks a lot of credit. I don't want to say that the Nets lost this series. The Bucks definitely won the series, but obviously Kyrie missing 3 games, James Harden essentially missing the whole series, missing those first 4 games, and then coming back and being hobbled in the last 3 made a huge impact because now you're focusing completely on KD if you're the Bucks. Now you're just like, all right, KD is going to try to beat us, and it's pretty much just going to be him. And he did in game 5, along with Jeff Green. And game 7, he was on pace to do that, but they just got tired at the end and they couldn't really do a whole lot else. So, props to the Bucks there because a lot of people probably didn't have them win the series after the first 2 games when they lost that first game close, but then the second game, with Harden still out, of course, they got absolutely blown out there. So you got to give them props for being able to come back in this series and beat the Nets, who everybody thought was probably going to win the championship this year. So Giannis was, funny enough, underrated this whole series. I mean, the man put up 30 plus every single game. He put up 40 and 13 in game 7. Chris Middleton was consistently inconsistent, but when he had to show up, he did show up there. So shout out to him. Shout out to Drew Holiday, underrated defender. He played great during this series. So overall, hats off to the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say especially people like Holiday and PJ Tucker, the impact of their defense, it doesn't go up on the stat sheet. Now they might have an off night for shooting. PJ is never really going to be an offensive producer, but you have to kind of look past that sometimes when you watch games and see the impact that their defense has. Now, we consider things good, like, oh, he held Kevin Durant to 28 at one game, but but you still have to see what they do to other players when they end up getting switched on them and stuff. And yeah, the Bucks probably did take advantage of some very untimely injuries that happened to the Nets. One thing I will say with Chris Middleton, he is definitely consistently inconsistent. You can always count on him to maybe drop 30 one night and follow it up with a 10-point night, which is not what you need from your number 2 guy. With the injuries the Nets had, if Chris would have played a little more consistently, it might not have went to 7. And that's only because of the injuries. I think a fully healthy Nets team, the best the Bucks could have done was go to 7. And either way, it still ended up going to 7. And Chris showed up in the last 2 games. He forced the game 7. He definitely helped in the game 7 when he finally caught fire in the second half, and of course hit pretty much the game winner in overtime. But yeah, very inconsistent, and he definitely makes playoff series a little more rocky than they need to be when he comes out and dies.
Yeah, and about the fact that the Bucks took advantage of the injuries, they did. But however, you know, the Nets to start off had 3 of the 4 best players. You have KD and then Giannis or Harden, depending on your opinion. But let's say Giannis is 2, and then you have Harden 3, Kyrie 4. So 3 of the top 4 players in the series are on one squad. And that shifts, after the injuries there. Regardless of whether James Harden came back, he wasn't himself, of course. So regardless, Drew Holiday is not Kyrie. Chris Middleton definitely is not James Harden. They are both all-star caliber players, but they're not all NBA players. So even if there were injuries, the Bucks still had to show up because James Harden was out game two. They got blown out. Kyrie has missed the past 3 games, and they did lose one of those. So the Bucks still had to show up. They did, and you have to give them props for that. But at the same time, give KD his flowers for the amazing performance he put up in this series. And I don't think this should really be an indictment on him. I know there's a lot of people comparing him to LeBron, saying, LeBron would have carried them through. Probably could have. I mean, LeBron has a lot of, endurance, but I don't think this should be an indictment on KD as a player. I mean, he did pretty much all he could.
Yeah, no, I definitely got to give KD his flowers here, and I mean, he's probably the best Game 7 performance of all time. Sure, if it would have came up with a win, it definitely would have been like the best. But it sucks that it came up for a loss. Even as a Bucks fan, when they lost, I was kind of dang, feel bad for KD and Harden and all of them. But it happens, and they'll probably be back next year going strong.
Now, moving on to a team that ain't going strong, that actually just crashed and burned, the Philadelphia 76ers lose game 7 to the Atlanta Hawks in Philly, 103-96. I don't know what is wrong with the 76ers. I don't know if it's a Doc Rivers problem, a Ben Simmons problem, but they lost and they're out. Trey Young, 21, 10, and 3. And on the other side with the Sixers, the big story here, Ben Simmons, 5 points.
Man, Ben,
Come on,
ben,
man.
ben Simmons has got to go, bro. He took like a total of 10 shots in all of the fourth quarters as far as the game sevens go, and some of those fourth quarters he didn't shoot. He shot 100% from the field in the fourth quarter. The problem is he never took more than 2 shots in the fourth quarter in all the games. It's not the issue really of that Ben Simmons can't hit a jumper. Now his free throw shooting, that is the problem. He just can't hit those. The issue is he couldn't take them. He went from last year he would take them and just brick them all the time to this year he just didn't even attempt to shoot them. And that combined now that Doc Rivers has like the worst record among NBA history as far as being in an elimination game was not good for the Sixers. Joel Embiid showed up every game. He tried to power them through as much as possible, but his number 2 guy Ben Simmons just wouldn't shoot the ball. He passed an open layup over Trey Young, 6'10" to like 6'2", and he passed over him and allowed it to get because he just wouldn't take the layup. You can't have him doing that. And I know they keep saying we can keep our core together. We want to preserve the trio or the duo of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, but I don't think Joel Embiid wants to play with Ben Simmons anymore.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how Embiid feels. He probably is a little bit upset considering they could have won the series. I wouldn't say easily because Trey Young was going crazy in this series. And in game 7, he wasn't even the leading scorer. Kevin Huerter, he went off 27 points and 7 rebounds. And John Collins also had 14 points and 16 rebounds. It was a total team effort from them. And Trey Young didn't even really play as well as we've seen Trey Young play in the playoffs so far. And they still lost because
Yeah.
Tobias Harris put up 20, Joel Embiid put up 31, Steph Curry put up 16, but Ben Simmons with 5, and they still lost. I mean, they just, go ahead. I can't. It's just, I don't understand. You gotta take shots. Like it's simple as that, man. You have to take shots. You cannot be afraid to shoot the ball. Like we've seen
Take
people compare. Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead. I was gonna say,
We, we
take it straight from Trey Young himself. He shot like 5 for 25, and what he said at the end of the game was, "It's not how many you make; it's when you take them or when you make them." And he made like 2 or 3 threes at the end of the game that essentially gave the Hawks the win. Ben just wouldn't take the threes or take anything at the end of the game, and that's the clear difference in mentality.
yeah, I've seen people compare Simmons to Giannis and the fact that Giannis isn't a great shooter either, but Giannis will shoot the ball. Even if Giannis is missing 10 threes a game, or obvious exaggeration there, but if he's missing a bunch of threes, I mean, he's still going to take the shots regardless because people are leaving him open and he's not afraid. Ben Simmons is just not shooting the ball, period. And I'm not really sure it's got to be like a mental, it's got to be a psychological thing for him, because I don't think he has a broken shot or anything like that. He just won't shoot. You're 6'10". You're a point guard. You should be able to dominate these people. You should be able to have some type of shooting confidence. Like you should have some kind of confidence in your shot that you should have more than 5 points in a game seven. I don't want to put the whole game on Ben Simmons because Doc Rivers, as you mentioned, has a track history of just choking. Saw it last year. We've seen it many times before with the Clippers. We've seen it before that, going all the way back to the early 2000s in his days in Orlando. Like we've seen him blown leads before, and this was nothing different. It does not help, obviously, when Ben Simmons only scores five, but they're the number one seed in the East. They could have won the series had they just played a whole lot better because there are multiple games where they choked huge leads around halftime when they could have easily gotten Atlanta out of there.
Yeah, there's no reason for them to go down to the fifth seed like this. I mean, we've seen it happen before. These kind of upsets happen, and you know they happen. It's basketball, but there's no reason the Sixers should have lost this one. They had a way better team, and they should have just executed well. And like you said, Ben Simmons, there's no reason for him to not be shooting. We've seen over the past few seasons that he has improved his shot at least a little bit, and him to just not take them, it literally cost them the game. And I don't want to put the whole thing on Ben Simmons like you said, but you listed, you know, all the Sixers players who stepped up and tried to do something, and then here's the number two guy on the team just idly waiting by, passing open layups to somebody who's defended by three people. And it just doesn't make sense. And for me personally, I don't see a Philly team with Ben Simmons on it to win. Now, I think Ben Simmons could work somewhere where there are, uh, you know, just a little bit maybe a different mentality, and they kind of pick him and get him going, and not just allow him to keep failing every year and stay the same. He's got to get out of being scared, or he's gonna become a bust quickly. His defense is one thing you can't really say is bad. I mean, he's a great defender, but you need more than defense from a guy who's supposed to be your number two guy.
Thing is, I mean, he put up 13 assists and 8 rebounds in that game. He is an all NBA defender. He is, pretty much good at most other things except the shooting and, the free throws, of course. And that just seems like simple stuff he should be able to work on. I understand everybody in the NBA cannot shoot threes like Steph, Trey, you know, James Harden, etc. But everyone needs to be able to shoot, especially you being a guard, your primary ball handler. You got to be able to pull up and shoot at some point. And the passing out of an easy shot at the rim to somebody else, like that to me is a psychological thing because there's no way he thought he's like, oh, I'm gonna get swiped or something like that. He's like, dude, you're right there. Just take the shot. It's as simple as that. So he can work in Philly if he greatly improves his shot and the fact and gets over the mental hurdles. Otherwise, he's probably out of there. And truthfully, he's probably out of there regardless because I don't really see how he can recover as far as, to the fans, to the organization.
Yeah, Philly's
If
ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, the people are not going to forget this. If he had at least tried, then, maybe people will say, all right, he can just improve his shot, come back next year. We can do it again. But the fact that he played this badly, I'm not sure if people are going to give him another shot here. So maybe a change of scenery is good for him. But regardless, he's going to need to improve his shot no matter where he goes.
I think if I'm another GM or something, I'm going to see that he is a good player with potential. And I know that the Sixers are probably wanting to maybe get him out of there and try something that works so they can stop coming up short. And I'm going to try to take advantage of it and grab Ben Simmons and turn him into what he's supposed to be. That's just me if I was in charge of a team that maybe needed an extra push. I think Ben can be that if he gets his own push.
Yeah, I think so too. But like you said, I think it's just not probably going to be in Philly. I think it's going to have to be somewhere else. Get pushed by someone. I mean, he has signed with Clutch Sports, so I mean, he can probably hit up LeBron if he needs to. Um, Obviously, LeBron is not considered a shooter or a scorer, but the man does score 30 points a night. So I think he has an idea of how to shoot. So Somebody got to help him with that shot, get over the mental hurdles, and hopefully he can be successful somewhere else. As far as the Hawks go, Trey Young, even though he didn't even play that well in game seven, he played crazy well in the rest of the games in the series. He played well in the first series against the Knicks. And Trey Young is looking like a top tier superstar right now, to say the least.
That's for sure. He's come out and he's proved that he is not afraid of the starlight, and he's embracing that villain role of just walking into these other people's houses and burning them down.
So, congratulations to the Hawks for being Sixers. And we'll see how they do in the next round against the Bucks. All right, y'all. So we're going to recap the Western Conference Finals. We have two games that have happened so far between the Clippers and the Suns. So game one, the Suns won 120 to 114. The Suns were led by Devin Booker with a triple-double, 40 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists. DeAndre Ayton also came in with 20 points and 9 rebounds, 2 assists. And on the other side, Paul George with 34 points, as well as Reggie Jackson with 24 points. And Terrence Mann, as we mentioned earlier, did not end up scoring 39. He had 30 less than that, finished the game with 9 points, and losing effort to the Suns.
Yeah, so as far as game one goes, I mean, this was one of those things where the Clippers did almost everything they could, and the Suns just kind of came out and did a little better. Uh, Paul George came out 34, 5-4. You can't ask for more than that as far as him being playoff P or pandemic P. This was playoff P coming out. Reggie Jackson really did his help. I guess the biggest issue is that those two were the only two that scored double digits, except for DeMarcus Cousins getting 11. And against a Suns team like this, you got to have a little more work. You look at it and you see, 9 points from Mann, 6 from Morris, 8 from Rondo, 9 from Zubac, 11 from DeMarcus. It's a nice, well put together scoring output from everybody. But the Suns just came out and did better and put him down, and the Clippers couldn't really do much about that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't really, you know, put too much on the Clippers here. Kawhi was not playing, obviously. Chris Paul was not playing for the Suns, though, as well. So we're kind of looking at this game as a more even playing field here. They have two of their top guys out. But that means somebody has to step up. Paul George did step up, but Devin Booker stepped up a whole lot more with that triple double, being one of the youngest players in playoff history to ever put up a triple double of that magnitude. And when Devin Booker puts up 40 points, you're probably going to lose no matter how good you play. And there are just a lot of parts of the game for the Clippers where they just made mistakes. And in the games like this, there's only so many mistakes that you can make. And otherwise, you're probably just going to lose. So I don't think this was a huge loss for the Clippers in game one. They only lost by 6 points. They could have won the game, but Suns being off for a whole week didn't really mean much to them at all because they came out fired from the beginning. The home crowd was electric for them. So, hats off to the Suns for that victory.
Yeah, definitely a very impressive victory for them. Then we moved to game two, which was a pretty back and forth game and had a very, very wild ending. Clippers came up short 103 104. Paul George led with 26 points for them, Reggie Jackson 19, Zubac had 14. And then over with the Suns, Cameron Payne led with 29 points, followed by DeAndre Ayton with 24, Booker with 20, and Ayton hit a huge game-winning alley-oop, which is not something you usually hear.
Yeah, so this is a game where I will say the Clippers screwed up. You cannot allow, and I know DeAndre Ayton is huge, but you cannot allow a man to hit a game-winning alley-oop dunk. Come on, man. I mean, that's all to the Suns for pulling this off, but come on, you cannot allow that to happen. That is the one thing you can't let happen. If they come in, shoot a three, make it. They come in, shoot a turnaround jumper. Heck, if they get a bouncer like Kawhi did against Philly a few years ago, you know what? You live with it. But you let that man get an alley oop with like point something seconds left. Come on. Now the big thing before that was the fact that Paul George missed two free throws that could have giving them a good margin there at the end. They would have had to come down and get three to tie the game up. But he missed both, and he did play well in the game. But you have to make at least one of those free throws there. Stars come up in moments like that, and I'm not a person that'll completely disregard his performance just because of two missed free throws. Those are the most important points of the game. It doesn't really matter much that he scored 26 points otherwise and led the team. You have to make those two free throws there, or at least one of them, to put your team up by two. And if they had put them up by three, obviously that would have never happened. They would have probably had to go to Devin Booker to shoot a three. But it didn't matter. Phoenix got the dub there off an alley oop.
Yeah, this is the perfect one for the Clippers to win. Michael Bridges and Jay Crowder played 35 and 32 minutes respectively, and almost ran around doing nothing. They probably had some good defensive impact, at least a little bit. But they put up in 35 minutes. Michael Bridges put up 5, 5, and 1, and Jay Crowder put up 2, 4, and 3. Etwan Moore, who played only 11 minutes, got 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 points, almost outplaying both the other aspect, at least on the stat sheet. Torrey Craig also played 11 minutes and did a whole lot of nothing. So this was the game that, essentially Cameron Payne, him coming out of nowhere, that's hard to handle. But you got like 6 people getting decent minutes, just not doing anything. And the Clippers have a perfect opportunity to come out and do something. Paul George missed those 2 free throws. Also, after DeAndre Ayton's game-winning alley-oop, there was a whole lot of mess going around. The Clippers managed to get the ball back after like 20 minutes of do they get the ball back or not. And Paul George missed a game-winning shot. And so it's just, like you said, stars come up in these big moments. You can't discredit Paul George's whole performance because he missed a few shots. But it does hurt his reputation a little bit as far as him being playoff P when he comes out and misses not 1, not 2, but technically 3 chances to at least boost or win the game right in these final seconds. And once again, you got 4 or 5 Suns players running around doing a bunch of nothing, and you get killed by 3 of them.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold, too much against them for that last shot at the end, but the free throws are the biggest deal there because they're free throws. Now, I'm not saying I can go out there and hit free throws in a playoff game in a hostile environment. So, I'm not an NBA player, though. I don't get paid to do this. Paul George, you got to make at least one of those free throws. And now going into game 3, which starts around the time we're recording now, you're down 0-2. You're back at home. You did start both series in the West this year in the playoffs. 0-2, came back to win. But the Phoenix Suns are a lot different beast. Despite being the 2 seed, they were better than Utah to me as a team. And now you have Chris Paul officially back for game 3. You still obviously don't have Kawhi. If they don't win, I would be very surprised to see the Clippers going past 4 against the Suns here.
Yeah, with Chris Paul coming back, the Clippers have got to put on the game of their lives. They have no Kawhi. They've now got to face a team who's already put them in a 2-0 hole, and they've got, arguably their best player back. And so you have got to come out and you got to play the game of your season and let put this mess to an end and try to come back, try to climb out like you did the past few series. They go down 3-0 tonight. I don't think they're going very far in the series at all, and I don't see another Clippers comeback happening. So yeah, Chris Paul coming back is probably a little stressful for the Clippers players. I do think the Clippers can still win this game, but it's going to be a lot harder. The Suns know where they have them. They know they have them in a 2-0 hole. The Suns also know that they've just climbed out of a 2-0 hole twice, and now they got their kind of head man in charge, at least as far as running the court back on, and they're going to come out on fire. And the Clippers have got to be ready to not only douse that fire, but keep their own going.
So now we're on to the Eastern Conference Final. And so far, we only had one game played, and that was on Wednesday night with the Hawks and the Bucks. Hawks put out the victory 116-113 in a very close game at the end. Trae Young went off 48.7 rebounds and 11 assists. John Collins, 23 points and 15 rebounds. As for the Bucks, Giannis led with 34 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. Drew Holiday with 33 points and 10 assists. and Chris Middleton with 15 points, 4 assists, and 5 rebounds in 41 minutes.
See, here's the thing. You can't let those 15 points fool you. This man shot like 25% from the field. Like we said earlier, Chris is consistently inconsistent. He can be the piece that will send you to the next round in a game seven, and he will then turn around to be the piece that makes you lose game one, essentially. I kind of think that Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday have like a clown of the day torch that they like to pass off to each other every other game because Drew shot terribly in game seven and then comes out this game, scores 33, 10, and 4, and shoots pretty efficiently. And Chris just falls apart and misses almost every shot. And, you know, it took a huge night from Trey and a bad night from the Bucks, and they won. The Hawks only won by 3. So as a Bucks fan, I'm not as scared of this as maybe some others are. But I also know that this Hawks team is a good team. They got to the ECF for a reason, and they've been on fire. And people keep underestimating them, and they keep going through and killing people. So regardless of the fact that this should be an easy thing to come back from, the Bucks have got to put in the effort to come back from it. They can't just sit back and be like, we got it. We just dropped a bad game, because they did just have a bad game. But if they keep that bad mindset, Trae Young's going to keep exploiting that, and boom, they're on to the finals.
Yeah, and we're not ragging on Chris Middleton just to rag on the guy. He's getting criticism because he's supposed to be your second best player. Whether you think Drew Holiday is better, that's your opinion. But let's just say he's the second best player. These guys are trying to win a championship. They've been trying to contend for a title the past 2 years now. Well, 3 years in total, but 2 years before this. And once again, in the playoffs, Chris Middleton just seems like he cannot get out of a shooting slump. And then the next game, we'll see he'll probably end up putting 50 or something like that. Dude just has to be consistent. And I know as a shooter, shooters, they get hot. It's not shooting is an art, obviously, and you can't literally control if the ball goes in the basket. It's pretty hard to be a consistent shooter. But when you have somebody that is this consistently inconsistent, as we said, it's just the problem. Now I do think they'll get past this. I think they'll beat the Hawks. I could be completely wrong here, but they're not going to beat the Hawks. If Chris Middleton comes out shooting like that. In
Yeah,
addition, you have to at least somewhat stop Trey Young. And, stopping Trey Young means getting him to score like 25 points instead of 48.
yeah. This is like the third time in the like past 10 games that the Bucks have allowed someone to put a smooth 50 on their head. KD did it twice, and now game one, Trey Young comes out and does the exact same thing, 48 points. And I mean, if you want to win playoff games, like they got lucky getting through the Nets and getting out after 2 almost 50-point games from KD, and then they turn around and let Trey Young put another one on them. You can't keep letting guys hit 50, because when someone puts up 50 points, and you have like John Collins put 23, Herter and Capella put up 13 and 12, it's enough to edge past a team, just because one guy got really hot. Now, if Chris would have hit like just 2 or 3 more of his shots, we might be talking differently today. We're sure he'd still missed a lot of shots, but they would have presumably, if you take the game how it is, would have won the game. And that's what makes it a little more infuriating, is that if he would just show up a little more, the Bucks could just smoothly get past that edge. But I'm not exactly sure why Coach Bud played Pat Connaughton for 29 minutes. He definitely is not a defensive help, and when he only ends the game with 4 points, he clearly doesn't deserve to play 29 minutes over at least other people like Bobby Portis. Now, of course, Portis and Connaughton, the completely different sizes. You're not going to sub one out for the other usually, but Coach Bud's rotations there are confusing at best.
Man, the Bucks, the Bucks are going to mess around, win this series, and then go up against presumably the Suns. And Devin Booker's going to put 50 on them every single night. And Chris Middleton's going to shoot great one night and great the next night, and then have 2 bad games, and then maybe show up in game 5 or 6. They cannot allow them to continually just allow this many points by a singular person. We understand KD is KD, but Trey Young is not KD. As great as Trey Young has been in the playoffs, cannot allow this man to put up 50 points. Put somebody on him that can at least get the ball out of his hands. He's he's obviously the best player by a decent margin on the Hawks. Now they are a good team overall, but nobody else on that team can shoot the way Trey Young can. So if you can get the ball out of his hands, harass him all night, you have a great defense on the Bucks. You shouldn't be allowing Trey Young to score 50 points. You have to have Chris Middleton shooting at least 30% from the field. Can I ask for that? 30% from the field from him. Giannis is going to do his thing pretty much because there's nobody on the Hawks that's really going to be able to stop Giannis. So Drew Holiday has to do what he does. He's probably not going to put up 33 every night, but at least get 20 from him, get good defense and assists from him. Chris Middleton shoots well. Coach Bud has to make good decisions. I'm not really sure what he's doing out there. Like you said, there's no reason Pat Connaughton should be playing darn near 30 minutes. I mean, he's playing more than Brooke Lopez. And I know Brooke Lopez isn't going to be, raining threes and everything, but heck, he played 20 minutes, scored 7 points. Yeah, he had better effort than Connaughton did out there. So coach needs to make some better adjustments. And I know you being a Bucks fan is probably going to give you a heart attack if they lose in game 2 in Milwaukee, because the last thing you want is for the Hawks fans in game 3 and 4 to start getting to the Bucks and they somehow end up getting swept.
Yeah, we get swept by the Hawks, man. I'm gonna just hide in the cave until the next season. There's losing to the Hawks is bad, at least as far as what everything looks like on paper. But being swept by them would be terrible. And yeah, they gotta make some adjustments. Brooke Lopez, I don't think him playing 20 minutes is good. I think he needs to come out and play a little more. He's a starter, and Bud doesn't use him well. He puts him in weird places and allows people to just kind of shoot all over him as he just kind of gets stuck in the paint. Well, once again, it's just Coach Bud is confusing, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Bobby Portis in this series could probably play a little more than Brooke, and could probably start as far as him being a consistent shooter of a center and a good defender. But yeah, it's not something for Bucks fans to be terrified about. They just need to come out. The Bucks need to come out and you know fix a few issues that they had in game 1. They should probably be able to go into Atlanta tied 1-1. But if they go to Atlanta down 0-2, I I don't know about that, man, because that's a bad arena to go in when you already have a star like Giannis who's a little rocky on the free throw line, and then he has these players yelling at him while he's down 0-2. So with Brooklyn, they went down 0-2, they came back home and they brought it back to 2-2. If they go down 0-2 this time, they're going away from home with that deficit, and that's not usually a good thing.
I think the easiest way for Giannis to piss off the Hawks fans in games 3 and 4 would be to take about 15 seconds, like he usually does at the free throw line, and then actually make his free throws there. But yeah, I don't think they'll get swept. But I was posing a scenario there. If they do somehow lose in, like, let's say 4 or 5, Coach Bud's probably out of there. And if Chris Middleton is part of the reason why they go out so early, he has that huge contract. But they're starting to look at this man like, you've done this multiple years in the playoffs now. You know, we need better from you. You got to live up to your contract. So we'll see how things go moving forward. So for our quickfire segment here today, we got 3 topics for y'all. So first up, we got Rick Carlisle. We'll be going back to the Indiana Pacers as head coach, signing a 4-year, $29 million contract. So how do you like this move?
I think Rick Carlisle is a pretty proven coach, at least for the most part. He did pretty good in Dallas while he was there, and as you said, he's going back to Indiana, and he'll probably have a little more success this time. I don't know that for sure. The Pacers are one of those teams that should be pretty good on paper. They obviously didn't make the playoffs this year. They kind of fumbled in the play-in, but you got Karis LeVert, which he's not their best guy. You got Sabonis, you got Brogdon. They've got the young power to be something. And I think Carlisle should be able to maybe manifest that. But I also see the issue of so did the Mavericks. The Mavericks are also one of those teams who've got a pretty clear star and then some nice pieces around them. And for the past few years, Carlisle wasn't able to push that to the right edge. So I don't know if he'll be able to do that with the Pacers or not. But I think he has a good chance to at least get them as in the playoffs the same way he did the Mavericks.
Maybe he just need to change the scenery. So, going back to a team where he was before, a long time ago, of course, but maybe that change of scenery will benefit him and benefit the Mavericks going forward. So next up, we have another coaching change with Ime Udoka going to be the Celtics head coach. And this is his first head coaching job in the NBA. He's been an assistant for years on the Spurs, no, most notably there. So how do you like this move?
I think this is a pretty good move. It gives another coach who hasn't had the big position to be able to try to step up and prove himself. And he's been an assistant to the Spurs. He was an assistant in Brooklyn this past season, and he's got some pretty good expertise, at least from what he's been able to do as he's been around. And I think that he should be able to add something to the Celtics. Now, the Celtics are another team who have everything they need to go somewhere. They just need the extra push. They obviously traded Kemba Walker to the Thunder, and so they're doing some new moves around. But yeah, I think Ime Udoka has a good chance of pushing them to the next level. We obviously don't know how he'll be as a head coach from any past experiences, but he's got some good expertise coming into it.
Yeah, I think this is another thing with, just the staff changes being a good thing here going in a new direction. Obviously, Danny Ainge retired. Brad Stevens moved up to the front office. Now you get a new guy in there. Maybe he can, bring some new, flavor, so to speak, to Boston. Help out these young stars because Boston has a really good team. They just haven't been able to really get over that hump. They did obviously make appearances in the Eastern Conference Finals, the past like 5 years. But hopefully, you got Jason Tatum being a superstar for sure now. Jaylen Brown coming back. You did trade Kumba, but going forward, I think they'll be pretty good. So having that new coach in there and a guy that's finally getting an opportunity to be a head coach will be good for Boston. So lastly, for Quickfire today, the Team USA Olympic basketball team is set. The roster has its 12-man, and it will be led by KD, Damian Lillard, and Devin Booker, as well as Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, Chris Middleton, and Zach LaVine as well. So, do you think this team? I'm laughing as asking this, but do you think this team will win gold?
I think if they don't, that there's a huge problem here, and somebody would have had to choke majorly. Uh, this team has a good chance of being, well, aside from some lacking size and the big man power, they could go pretty far in the NBA if it was a constructed team. I wouldn't say 82-0 because of the size thing. They might drop one or two a year, but this is like a 79 win team, and that's against the NBA players. Now, not to say that foreign teams are like super bad or anything, because they're not. Obviously, we get people like Luka who come over from there, and Nikola Jokic and everything. But this is a collection of some incredible players, and they should be able to just cruise through the Olympics this year.
Yeah, I mean, generally, Team USA, we always get gold. Obviously, 2004 uh, didn't. In 2006 in FIBA, they didn't as well. But generally, the team is always going to be good. You get the top stars in the NBA. Of course, LeBron hasn't done it since 2012. You got some other guys that aren't going. James Harden seemed like he was going to go, but didn't. Chris Paul, missing other guys like Kyrie, Steph, so on and so forth. But I think regardless, the team's still going to be pretty good. And with KD, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Tatum, and Beal alone as their top five players, pretty much, they should be just fine.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, guys, I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. As always, timestamps and links down in the description. Check us out on Spotify if you want to head over there, or stay on YouTube and continuously watch the podcast over here. So, with that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching. This has been T Brown 31 with J Buck the Great. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see y'all later.